Marrying my son did not give you permission to touch what his father left behind.
Funke Balogun's voice cut across the Lagos construction site so sharply that even the workers stopped moving. Kemi froze beside the redevelopment drawings. "You heard me!" Funke stepped closer, ruby-red outfit blazing against the dusty concrete. "You entered my son's life, and suddenly my family property is being pulled apart." Kemi's fingers tightened around the plans. That project was not my decision. Before Funke could answer, a cobalt blue Range Rover stopped nearby. Tayo Balogun stepped out. The billionaire walked straight between his mother and his wife, placed one protective hand on Kemi's shoulder, and said quietly, "Mum, enough." For one dangerous second, Kemi believed her husband had chosen her. She had no idea that Tayo was the reason these two women hated each other in the first place. And when they finally compared what he had told them separately, their marriage, his billion-naira empire, and his carefully protected reputation would all come under question. So don't leave this story halfway. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and what time it is there right now. And if you enjoy powerful stories about family, dignity, and consequences, subscribe and stay with us. Because what these two women discovered about Tayo changed everything. Kemi did not answer Funke immediately. She looked down at the drawings spread over the temporary site table. They were not demolition plans. Not yet. They were survey overlays, structural notes, drainage lines, old service routes, the kind of papers people who did not work in architecture often looked at and called plans, as if every line already meant somebody's wall was coming down. A gust of dry afternoon wind lifted one corner. Kemi pressed it flat with her palm. Behind Funke, the old Balogun Court stood under the washed-out Lagos sun. 3 blocks of aging flats wrapped around a broad courtyard where 2 almond trees had somehow survived decades of children, washing lines, footballs, generators, and landlord arguments. The paint had once been cream. Now it was a tired color that belonged to no paint catalogue. People lived there. That mattered to Kemi more than the men in hard hats seemed to understand. She turned to Tayo. "Tell her." Tayo's hand was still on her shoulder. His thumb moved once, almost reassuringly. "Mum, this is a survey visit," he said. "Nothing has been approved." Funke gave a short laugh. "Nothing has been approved. But your wife is standing here with architects." "I am an architect," Kemi said. "I know what you are." There was something about the way Funke said it that made the nearest quantity surveyor suddenly become very interested in his phone. Kemi heard the insult beneath the sentence, not the profession. "Her place." Tayo exhaled. "Mum, please." "No, let her answer me. When my husband bought these buildings, half of your people were still looking for offices to rent in Surulere. He kept them because he said property should not only be valued by what can be squeezed out of it." Kemi stared at her. "My people?" Funke's mouth tightened. Tayo stepped in before the question could grow teeth. "She means your firm." "No, she does not, Kemi." That was all he said. Her name, soft, private, a warning dressed like affection. Kemi folded the top drawing slowly. "Mrs. Balogun, I was asked to assess what can be repaired, what cannot, and what the site would require if anything changes. I have not approved anybody's relocation. I have not signed off on demolition, and I have certainly not decided what happens to your husband's property." Funke's eyes moved to Tayo. "Then who did?" For half a second, nobody spoke. Tayo smiled. It was the smile he used in investor photographs. Calm enough to make uncertainty look childish. "No one has decided anything. That is what I have been trying to tell both of you." Both of you. The phrase landed between them and did exactly what Tayo needed it to do. It made Funke look at Kemi. It made Kemi look back at Funke. The question that should have stayed on Tayo moved sideways. He was very good at that. "Let's go," he told Kemi. "You've done enough for today." Kemi wanted to refuse, simply because Funke was watching. Then she saw Ruth Johnson standing under the shade of one of the almond trees. Kemi had met her twice during the preliminary surveys. Late 60s, perhaps. Grey threaded through neat cornrows pulled behind her head. She wore a faded green wrapper and a loose cream blouse, one hand resting on the handle of a walking stick she did not always use. Ruth was not staring at Funke. She was staring at the plans, worried. That bothered Kemi more than the insult. She picked up her leather document case. "Tayo, I'll call you later." His hand tightened lightly on her shoulder. "We came together. I know. Kemi." This time his voice was lower. She looked at him. He smiled again. There were days when Tayo's smile made a room feel safer. That afternoon she could not explain why it made her feel managed. "I still have 2 measurements to confirm," she said. Funke turned away first. "Do whatever you came to do, but hear me clearly, young woman. Balogun Court is not a wedding gift." She walked toward her driver before Kemi could answer. The ruby-red fabric moved through the dust, like an argument that had refused to end. Tayo waited until the car door closed behind his mother. Then he rubbed both hands over his face. "I'm sorry." Kemi looked at him. "For what?" "For her." "That is not what I asked." Tayo's brows drew together. "She should not have spoken to you like that." "No, she should not have. But she thinks I am pushing this project." "Why?" "She thinks many things. That is not an answer." He glanced toward the site workers. "Can we not do this here?" Kemi almost laughed. His mother had accused her in front of everybody. Now privacy had become urgent. "Still," she lowered her voice, "you told me she wanted redevelopment because the maintenance burden was getting ridiculous." "She does." "Then why did she just accuse me of touching what your father left behind?" Tayo looked toward Funke's departing car. "My mother wants change until change has a face. Then she hates the face." It sounded plausible. That was the problem with most dangerous lies. They rarely arrived wearing nonsense. Kemi looked at him for a long moment. "You are sure she knows this is still exploratory?" "Yes. And she knows I did not propose tenant relocation?" "Yes, and she knows my firm is not the developer." "Yes, Kemi." He reached for her hand. "Do not allow her fear to enter our marriage." Kemi's fingers remained stiff inside his. "What exactly is she afraid of?" Tayo's answer came too quickly. "Losing me." He kissed her forehead. It was tender, familiar. And for the rest of that afternoon, Kemi hated herself for letting the tenderness settle the question. The Balogun house in Ikoyi was the kind of place newspapers described as tasteful, because nobody knew what else to call a building that had cost too much money to look expensive. Kemi had been living there for 7 months. Some mornings, she still woke before Tayo and stared at the quiet bedroom as if somebody might ask her to leave. Not because Tayo ever had, because Funke had made sure she understood that entering the family was not the same thing as belonging to it. The first time Kemi met her, Funke had asked where her parents lived before she asked what Kemi did for work. The second time, she had asked whether Kemi's father had people in government. In the same tone, someone might ask whether a phone came with a charger. At the engagement dinner, Funke had smiled for the photographs and spoken to Kemi twice. Once to tell her she looked beautiful. Once to tell her that marriage into a powerful family came with responsibilities. Young women do not always understand. Kemi had understood perfectly. The message was not difficult. "You are being admitted under observation." Tayo had laughed it off later. "My mother was born suspicious," he said. If Jesus came to her door with 12 references, she would ask for one more. Kemi had laughed too. That was before the small things accumulated. Funke changing the seating arrangement at a family dinner so Kemi would not sit beside an elderly aunt who liked her. Funke asking Tayo whether he had properly reviewed an investment after Kemi mentioned it was interesting. Funke introducing Kemi at a charity lunch as Tayo's wife, after introducing everyone else by profession. Nothing large enough to declare war over. Everything sharp enough to remember. The evening after the argument at Balogun Court, Tayo came home with takeaway from Kemi's favorite suya place and a bottle of wine she had mentioned once, months earlier. He remembered things. That was one of the reasons she had married him. Not the money. Not the articles calling him one of Nigeria's most aggressive young investors. Not the photograph of him ringing a ceremonial bell at some business event she had never cared about. He remembered the small things. The name of the secondary school teacher who had taught Kemi technical drawing. The fact that she hated pawpaw but liked pawpaw juice if it was cold enough. The date her mother died. even though Kemi never put it in her calendar. People who wanted to call her foolish later would have liked to forget that part. Manipulation is easier to recognize in somebody you never loved. Kemi sat on the kitchen island while Tayo opened the wine. You bribed me with suya. Is it working? Ask me after the beef, he smiled. There he was again, the man she knew. For 15 minutes they spoke about everything except Funke. A leak in one of Kemi's office bathrooms. A contractor who had submitted a quotation with 2 different totals on 2 different pages. Tayo's younger cousin who had decided, after 3 months in London, that everybody in Lagos was too stressful. Then Tayo leaned against the counter. Mum called me. Kemi looked up. Of course she did. She thinks you embarrassed her. Kemi put down the skewer in her hand. Me? I didn't say she was right. She came to a site and accused me of taking over her dead husband's property. I know. In front of my consultants. I know. And she is embarrassed? Tayo poured more wine into her glass. You know how she is. That phrase again. You know how she is. A sentence that could excuse almost anything if people used it long enough. Kemi wiped her fingers on a napkin. What exactly did you tell her about my role? The truth. Which truth? His face changed by less than an inch. What does that mean? It means I want to know what she thinks I am doing. Kemi, please. No, I am serious. He pushed away from the counter. I told her you had been advising on options. That is all. And did you tell her I suggested redevelopment? Tayo paused. I told her you thought the existing blocks might not justify indefinite repair. Kemi stared at him. That is not the same thing. I know, no, Tayo. I said 2 of the rear service cores were becoming uneconomical to patch. I also said the main blocks could probably be rehabilitated if the owners accepted the cost. And I told her that. Exactly? He gave her a tired look. Do you want a transcript? The question irritated her because it made her sound unreasonable. That was another thing Tayo was good at. He rarely refused a question. He made the question seem excessive. Kemi stood. I want to know why your mother believes I arrived with a bulldozer hidden under my blouse. Tayo laughed despite himself. She did not. His laughter died. Fine. I will speak to her. You always speak to her. And nothing changes. He watched her. What are you asking me to do? I am asking you to stop managing us separately. For the first time that night, he did not have an answer ready, Kemi noticed. Then his phone rang. He looked at the screen and turned it face down. She saw the caller name before it disappeared. Adekunle Finance. You can take it, she said. It can wait. You never let finance wait. Tonight I am trying to save my marriage from my mother. He smiled again. Kemi wanted to stay angry. She really did. But marriage is full of moments that do not look important while they are happening. You decide whether to keep pressing, whether to let somebody sleep, whether to accept a half answer because tomorrow is busy. Kemi picked up her wine. Speak to her properly. I will, and do not tell her I am trying to push you away from your family. His expression sharpened. Why would I tell her that? Kemi shrugged. Because that is what she behaves like she believes. Tayo came around the island and took both her hands. My mother has believed that since before our wedding. Why? Because you are the first woman I ever chose without asking for her opinion. That answer had weight. Kemi felt it settle. Tayo touched her cheek. She will come around. You have been saying that for 1 year. Then give me another year. I may charge interest. He grinned. Billionaire. I can afford it. She smiled despite herself. And that was how the conversation ended, not with a lie exposed. With a joke. 3 days later, Kemi received the first document that made the joke stop being funny. It came from a project coordination firm she knew by reputation, not by relationship. The subject line was ordinary. Balogun Court, design basis confirmation. Kemi opened it between 2 meetings at her office in Yaba. At first, nothing looked wrong. The email thanked her practice for preliminary design collaboration and asked her to confirm that the attached summary accurately reflected The redevelopment concept currently under financing review. Kemi frowned. Financing review? She clicked the attachment. Page 1 used her firm's name correctly. Page 2 described her initial survey work correctly. Page 3 did not. It said her practice had developed an adaptive redevelopment concept incorporating phased resident transition, demolition of structurally inefficient rear components, and repositioning of the site for mixed-use residential value. Kemi read the sentence twice, then a third time. She had developed no such thing. She had prepared 3 option studies: repair, partial rebuild, full redevelopment. The entire point was to compare them. She scrolled down. A diagram she had drawn during an internal workshop appeared on page 6. It was marked Preferred Direction. Kemi sat back. Across the office, one of her junior architects was arguing with a printer. Somebody laughed in the meeting room. A delivery rider knocked at the glass door and held up a brown envelope. The world was behaving normally. Kemi read the page again. Preferred Direction. Her phone was already in her hand when she stopped. She had been about to call Tayo. Instead, she opened the original project folder on her server. She pulled up the workshop minutes from 6 weeks earlier. Option A, rehabilitation. Option B, selective reconstruction. Option C, redevelopment. No preference recorded. She checked her outgoing email to Tayo. The message was still there. My professional view is that no preferred scheme should be selected until structural testing, resident impact review, and ownership objectives are aligned. Kemi stared at that line. She remembered writing it because she had changed must not to should not. Tayo disliked language that sounded like instruction when he was paying the invoice. Her phone vibrated. Tayo. She looked at the screen. For the first time in their marriage, she let his call ring out while she continued reading. Kemi did not reply to the email that afternoon. She printed the attachment. Not because she needed paper. Because some things became harder to excuse when you could hold them in your hand. She marked every sentence that exceeded her actual scope with a blue pen. There were 7. At 6:30, after most of her staff had left, she finally called Tayo back. He answered on the second ring. Madam Architect, so you now screen your husband's calls? His tone was playful. Kemi looked at the 7 blue marks. I was in meetings. Everything okay? Yes. A beat. You sound strange. I'm tired. Come home. I'll order food. What time are you coming? Maybe 9. I have a financing call. There it was again. Financing. Kemi turned the printed memo over so she would not stare at it. For Balogun Court? Silence. Not long. Long enough. Partly. I thought nothing had been approved. Nothing has. Then what is being financed? Tayo chuckled softly. Do you think banks wake up after approvals? We run parallel work streams. You know that. She did know that. A financing discussion did not prove construction was decided. Early funding conversations happened all the time. Another plausible answer. Kemi hated how much she wanted him to be right. I received a coordination memo today. What memo? From Veritas Project Partners. This time the silence was cleaner. Okay. They described my option C work as the preferred direction. That is probably shorthand. No, Kemi. It is not shorthand. It is inaccurate. I'll look at it. You have not seen it? I see hundreds of documents. That one carries my firm's name. I said I'll look at it. His patience thinned only slightly. That slightness was what made it visible. Kemi leaned back in her chair. Who told them option C was preferred? I don't know. Find out I will. And until then, nobody should represent my work as endorsement. Fine. His answer came too quickly again. Kemi closed her eyes. Tayo, did you tell them? No. The word was immediate. Perfect. Then he added, not in the way you are asking. Kemi opened her eyes. What does that mean? It means I may have said redevelopment was commercially stronger. That is my view. I did not say you endorsed it. Did you show them my option study? Yes, because it exists. Did you tell them it was one of 3? I assume the package did. That is not what I asked. Kemi, I'm about to enter a meeting. Of course you are. He exhaled. Please don't make this bigger than it is. There are sentences people remember because they were cruel. Kemi remembered that one because it was neat. Please don't make this bigger than it is. It placed the size of the problem in her hands. If she objected too strongly, she was the one enlarging it. Send me the package you authorized, she said. I'll have someone send it. No, you send it. Another pause. Fine, the line went dead. He did not send it that night. At 10:15, he came home with the face of a man who had spent 3 hours convincing other wealthy men that uncertainty was under control. Kemi was reading in bed. He kissed her temple. You're awake, obviously. I spoke to Veritas. She put down the book. And they used careless wording. Who gave them the material? My project team. Which person? Kemi. Which person? He loosened his tie. Why are you interrogating me like I stole your drawings? Because my name is being used in a process I did not approve. I told you it will be corrected. That is not the same as telling me how it happened. Tayo stood at the foot of the bed. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he sat down. My team knows I believe redevelopment is the most viable option. They moved too quickly. That is on me. The admission disarmed her. Not completely. Enough. You should have told me there was financing review. I was going to. When? When there was something worth telling. My work was already in the pack, and it should not have been described that way. He took her hand. I said that is on me. Kemi looked at him. He had apologized. Part of her wanted to accept the apology, because that was what healthy adults were supposed to do when someone admitted fault. Another part kept hearing the careful border around his admission. His team moved too quickly. Not him. Careless wording. Not misrepresentation. Nothing worth telling. She pulled her hand away gently. Send me the full pack tomorrow. I will. He studied her face. You don't trust me. There it was. Not anger. Pain. Kemi almost resented him for looking hurt. I trust you enough to ask. He gave a small, humorless laugh. That is a new definition. Good night, Tayo. He turned off his bedside lamp. For the first time since their wedding, they slept with an unresolved question between them. The next morning, before Tayo sent anything, Funke called Kemi. Kemi nearly ignored the call. Then she remembered the construction site. She answered, Yes, Mrs. Balogun. Come to my house this afternoon. No greeting, no explanation. Kemi looked at her schedule. I have work. So do I. Then we are both busy. Kemi, the older woman's voice lowered. I do not enjoy repeating myself. Neither do I. A sharp breath came through the phone. Then Funke surprised her. Please. Kemi sat up straighter. Funke Balogun did not use please when she believed authority would work. What is this about? Balogun Court. I thought you did not want me touching Balogun Court. Come at 4. The line ended. Kemi stared at her phone. At 3:58, she drove through the gates of Funke's Banana Island home. The house was older than Tayo's place and less eager to impress anybody. Dark wood, wide verandas, photographs in heavy silver frames, furniture that had survived 3 redecorations because Funke liked it and therefore saw no reason for fashion to argue. She received Kemi in a sitting room overlooking the lagoon. No tea was offered. That told Kemi the meeting was serious. Funke sat on one sofa. Kemi took the chair opposite. Between them, a low table carried a blue folder. Funke tapped it once. I want you to withdraw from the project. Kemi blinked. You invited me here to say the same thing you shouted at the site. I invited you here because my son is refusing to listen. Your son hired my firm, and you accepted. Yes, for option assessment. Do not hide behind technical language. Kemi leaned forward. I am not hiding. I am being precise. There is a difference. Funke's nostrils flared. You came into this family, and within months, Tayo is discussing redevelopment of property his father protected for years. Your son told me you wanted that discussion. Funke went still. Kemi saw it. Not anger. Confusion. Excuse me? Tayo told me maintenance had become too expensive and that you wanted options. I wanted an asset review. That includes options. It did not include tearing down half the compound. I have not recommended tearing down half the compound. Funke slapped her palm against the blue folder. Then why is your drawing in here? Kemi's eyes dropped to the folder. What drawing? Funke opened it. Inside was a board pack. Kemi recognized the same diagram she had seen in the Veritas memo. Her stomach tightened. Under the diagram was a caption. Conceptual redevelopment. George Studio. Kemi reached for the page. Funke placed one hand over it. No. Kemi looked at her. If my firm's name is on that, I need to see it. You already know what is in it. No, I don't. Do not insult me. I am not insulting you. Tayo said you believe redevelopment is necessary. Kemi stared at her. What exactly did he say? Funke's expression hardened. You are now pretending you do not know? Tell me his words. Funke stood. The movement ended the conversation before either woman understood how close they were to the truth. He said you were concerned I would block what was necessary because I am sentimental about my husband's property. Kemi rose too. He told me you were the one pushing him to stop wasting money on repairs. For 1 second, they simply looked at each other. There it was. A crack, small enough to step over, large enough to fall through. Then pride arrived first. Funke's face shut. My son would not say such a thing. Kemi laughed once. Of course. You are calling him a liar. I am telling you what he told me, and I am telling you what he told me. Then perhaps you should ask him why the stories are different. You would enjoy that, wouldn't you? Kemi stared at her. What does that even mean? It means you have been looking for a way to put me against my son from the beginning. The crack closed, not because it had disappeared, because both women stepped away from it. Kemi picked up her handbag. You know what? Keep your project. Funke's eyes flashed. You think I need your permission? No, but you may need somebody's consent before you keep putting their name on drawings. Kemi walked out before the older woman could answer. She made it to her car before her hands began to shake. Not from fear, from the effort of not going back inside. Her phone rang. Tayo. She looked at the house behind her. Then at his name, she answered, Did my mother call you? Kemi said nothing. Kemi? How did you know? A pause. She called me first. What did she tell you? That she wanted you off the project. And what did you tell her? That she cannot dictate who I hire. He sounded protective again. Kemi closed her eyes. She showed me a board pack. Silence. My drawing is in it. I know. So now you know which pack I was asking for last night. I said I was sending it. You did not. I have been in meetings since 7. Tayo. Did you tell your mother I believe redevelopment is necessary? He exhaled. I told her you believe the site requires major intervention. That is not the same thing. Kemi, we are doing this again. No, we are finally doing it properly. What do you want from me? The truth without your translation. His voice changed, cooler now. I have never lied to you. Kemi gripped the steering wheel. Then why does your mother have a different version of my opinion from the one I gave you? You know how she hears things. Kemi almost laughed. There it was again. You know how she is. Now, you know how she hears things. The problem always moved toward the other woman. Tayo, I am done discussing your mother through you. He went quiet. What does that mean? It means if she wants to know what I think, she can ask me. If I want to know what she thinks, I will ask her. A longer silence. Kemi, that is not a good idea. Something in her sharpened. Why? Because every direct conversation you two have turns into a fight. Maybe because somebody keeps preparing us for the fight before we enter the room. He did not answer. Kemi ended the call. She sat in Funke's driveway for another 30 seconds. Then she drove away. Inside the house, Funke remained standing beside the blue folder. She told herself Kemi was manipulative. She told herself Tayo had simplified things because busy men simplified things. She told herself she knew her son. Then her housekeeper entered quietly. Madam, there is one Mrs. Johnson at the gate. From Surulaire. Funke frowned. Johnson? She said Balogun Court. Funke looked at the folder again. Let her come in. Ruth Johnson entered 15 minutes later, carrying a transparent plastic envelope beneath her arm. She refused the sofa at first. I will not stay long, madam. Sit. Ruth sat. Funke remembered her vaguely. She had been a tenant at Balogun Court since before Tayo finished university. Her late husband had repaired radios in one of the front shops until his eyesight failed. "What is the problem?" Funke asked. Ruth placed the envelope on her knees. "People came again yesterday." "What people?" "Survey people. They said they are documenting households before transition planning." Funke frowned. "There is no transition planning." Ruth looked at her carefully. "That is why I came." She opened the plastic envelope and removed a printed notice. Funke took it. The letter did not order anybody out. It was subtler than that. It informed residents that future redevelopment options may require phased transition arrangements, and that household information was being collected following preliminary owner approval for project progression. Funke read the last line again. "Owner approval? What owner?" Ruth shifted in her chair. "Madam, that is what we are asking. I have not approved anybody to relocate." "I know." Funke looked up sharply. "How do you know?" "Because your husband never moved people without speaking to them first. And because you told us 2 years ago that if anything serious changed, you would come yourself." The words struck somewhere. Funke had not prepared to defend. She remembered that promise. She had made it in the courtyard after a drainage dispute. Ruth continued. "Some people are already afraid. One woman has started looking for another school for her children because she thinks notice will come next month." "There is no notice. Then somebody should tell them clearly." Funke read the paper again. At the bottom was the name of a project coordination firm, Veritas Project Partners. She had seen the name in the board pack. "Did they say I approved this?" Ruth hesitated. One young man said the family had agreed in principle. Funke's jaw tightened. "Which family?" Ruth gave her a look older people reserve for questions whose answer is obvious but dangerous. "Madam, in that place, when they say Balogun family, people think of you and your son." After Ruth left, Funke did not call Tayo. She nearly did. Her hand hovered over his name. Then she remembered Kemi standing in the sitting room saying, "Tell me his words." Funke hated that she remembered it. She hated even more that the question now seemed sensible. Instead of calling her son, she took the blue folder upstairs to the small study where her late husband had kept property files. She opened the board pack from the beginning, not the summary, not the highlighted pages Tayo had marked with yellow stickers every page. On page 19, beneath a heading called Ochre Strategic Depression, she found her own name. Funke Balogun, supportive of comprehensive asset optimization, subject to appropriate family legacy considerations. She read it twice. Technically, she had said something close to that, 6 months earlier, at a meeting about the entire property portfolio, not Balogun Court alone, not demolition, not resident transition. She flipped to the appendix. There was her signature on a general asset review resolution. Genuine, her own handwriting. She remembered signing it. Tayo had stood beside her desk and said, "Routine housekeeping, Mum. We need updated options across the older assets." She had signed while arguing with a caterer on the phone about an anniversary dinner. Funke sat very still. Nothing on the page was forged. That almost made it worse, because now she could not dismiss the problem as fraud done by strangers. Somebody had taken a wide door she had opened an inch and walked a whole project through it. The next morning, Kemi received the full financing pack, not from Tayo, from his executive assistant, forwarded at 7:12 a.m. with one line. "Mr. Balogun asked me to share the attached documents with you." Kemi stared at the message while drinking coffee at her kitchen counter. Tayo had already left for an early breakfast meeting. He had kissed her cheek before leaving. "Long day," he said. Nothing about the file. She opened it. 186 pages. She smiled without humor. A large document was often a good place to hide a small assumption. Kemi knew that from architecture. People argued over dramatic drawings. The dangerous things were often in notes, legends, and appendices. She started at page 1. By 8:30, her coffee was cold. The pack did not say George Studio had approved demolition. It did not say Funke had approved tenant eviction. It did not contain one spectacular lie. Instead, it contained a chain of softer statements that leaned on each other. The owners had indicated support for asset repositioning. The design consultant had identified redevelopment as commercially superior. Resident transition planning had commenced to reduce execution risk. Preliminary financing discussions assumed a mixed-use redevelopment case. Every sentence could be defended if a person selected the right earlier sentence and ignored the rest. Kemi read the design section again. Then she found an email copied into an appendix from Tayo to the project team. Kemi has confirmed that major intervention is unavoidable. Proceed with option C as the base case for commercial evaluation while we close out stakeholder alignment. Kemi put down her coffee. Major intervention is unavoidable. She had said those words during a conversation about failing wastewater lines and 2 rear stairwells, not about the whole site. Tayo had taken a true sentence and moved it into a different room. Her phone buzzed. A message from him. Dinner tonight? Just us. No property talk. Kemi looked at it for a long time. Then she typed, I need to review the pack first. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, of course. At her office, Kemi closed the door and called her senior associate, David. He entered carrying a notebook. You look like somebody rejected a planning application. Worse, client reduced fee? Much worse. That made him sit down. Kemi turned her laptop toward him. Read the highlighted section. Tell me what you think it says about us. David read silently. After a minute, he frowned. It says we are basically behind the redevelopment concept. Are we? No, exactly. He looked at her. Who wrote this? Client-side team, your husband's team. Kemi nodded. David leaned back. That is messy. Technical term? Very technical. She almost smiled. Then David pointed at the screen. Are they asking us to confirm this? Yes. Then do not. Kemi looked at him. The simplicity of the answer helped. Not everything required emotional interpretation. If a statement was inaccurate, you corrected it. If consent had not been given, you did not pretend it had. Marriage did not change that. Kemi drafted a response. George Studio confirms participation in preliminary option assessment only. We have not selected or endorsed a preferred redevelopment option. Our studies remain subject to structural verification, client instruction, resident impact review, and further design development. Any document describing option C as our endorsed or preferred scheme should be corrected accordingly. She read it twice, then sent it. No drama, no accusation, a clean line in writing. 27 minutes later, Tayo called. Kemi, no playful greeting this time. Yes? I just saw your email. Good, you copied Veritas, my project director and finance counsel. They were on the request. You could have sent it to me first. Why? So we could align. Kemi leaned back. Align what? The language. The facts do not need alignment. Tayo was quiet. She could hear traffic on his end, a horn, then the muted thud of a car door. Kemi, you have now created unnecessary concern around a financing process. I corrected an inaccurate description of my work. You could have done that without making it look like there is a dispute. There is a dispute. With me? With the document. That is convenient, she sat forward. What does that mean? It means you know exactly how people read these things. You are an experienced professional. A correction like that can freeze momentum. Then the momentum was depending on something that was not true. His breath came out slowly. Not untrue, incomplete. Kemi closed her eyes. There it was, the word he had been searching for, incomplete. A respectable word, a word that wore a suit. Did I endorse option C? She has asked. No. Did your pack make it reasonable for a lender to believe I had? Silence. Kemi, yes or no? It summarized the commercial direction. Whose direction? Mine, then use your name. He did not answer. Kemi continued. Not mine. She ended the call before he could turn the conversation into marriage. Her hands were steady this time. That afternoon, Funke sent her a message. Not a call, a message. Can you come tomorrow morning? I have a document I need you to look at. Kemi read it twice. There was no command in it. No come at 4. No assumption, she replied. 10 a.m. Funke sent one word. Fine. At 9:59 the next morning, Kemi was back in the older woman's sitting room. This time there was tea. Neither of them drank it. The blue folder lay on the table, joined by Ruth's notice and a second stack of papers. Funke did not waste time. I read the whole board pack. Kemi raised one eyebrow. Congratulations. Funke's face hardened. Then unexpectedly she nodded. I deserve that. Kemi said nothing. Funke slid the resident notice toward her. Read. Kemi did. Her expression changed. Who gave this to you? Mrs. Johnson. Ruth, you know her? I met her during surveys. Funke watched her carefully. She says people are already making plans to leave. Kemi looked up. Nobody should be doing that based on preliminary work. That is what I thought. The sentence sat between them. That is what I thought. Not, that is what Tayo told me. Kemi noticed the difference. Funke opened the board pack to page 19. This says I support comprehensive asset optimization. Do you? Yes. Kemi blinked. Funke almost smiled. I am not sentimental to the point of stupidity. Old buildings cost money. Then what is the problem? The problem is that I said it about the portfolio. Not this project. And I said subject to legacy considerations, because my husband kept certain properties, for reasons that were not only financial. Kemi looked down at the page. Do you have the original minutes? Funke pointed to the second stack. I asked Samuel for them. You asked the company secretary? Yes. Did you tell Tayo? No. Kemi looked up. Funke's chin lifted. Do not look so surprised. I am trying not to. For the first time, the corner of Funke's mouth moved. Not a smile exactly. Close. They read the minutes together. The original resolution authorized strategic review of older assets and preparation of options for further consideration. No approved scheme. No resident relocation. No instruction to proceed with redevelopment. Kemi placed her financing pack beside Funke's board pack. I have something too. Funke's eyes narrowed. What? Kemi opened to the design section. This is what Tayo's financing team sent. Funke read. Her mouth tightened at the phrase major intervention is unavoidable. You said that? Yes. Funke looked at her sharply. Kemi tapped another document. About wastewater lines and 2 rear stair cores. She showed her the original email and workshop minutes. Funke read them. Then she read Tayo's summary, then the original again. The room became very quiet. Outside, a speedboat passed across the lagoon, loud for a moment, then gone. Funke looked at Kemi. What exactly did he tell you I wanted? Kemi did not answer immediately. This was the point where they could still retreat. She could decide the older woman was setting a trap. Funke could decide Kemi was performing innocence. Both choices would be familiar. Kemi opened her handbag and took out a small notebook. I started writing it down. Funke stared at her. You keep notes on conversations with your husband. Only after his document started disagreeing with me. Funke looked offended on Tayo's behalf. Then she caught herself. Fine. Read. Kemi did. He told me you wanted the older properties reviewed because maintenance was draining cash. That is true. He said you believed Balogun Court had become too expensive to preserve as it is. Funke frowned. I said some parts may no longer be worth repairing. He said you were leaning toward redevelopment but did not want to be the one to say it publicly because of your husband's memory. Funke sat back. I never said that, Kemi continued. He said you would resist me personally, even if I recommended what you already wanted. Funke's face changed. Not anger this time. Pain, though she would have denied the word. He said that? Yes. Funke looked away. Kemi waited. Then Funke stood and walked to a cabinet. She returned with her phone. I do not write notes, she said. I remember. Kemi almost said. I have noticed. She did not. Funke sat again. He told me you considered rehabilitation a waste of money. I did not. He said you believed my husband had been too emotional about the property. Kemi stared at her. I never met your husband. I know. He told you I said that? Yes. Funke's voice had gone very flat. He said you were worried I would pressure him to preserve the place for sentimental reasons and make the business carry the cost. Kemi closed her notebook. For several seconds, neither woman moved. The same man had stood in 2 different rooms and built 2 different women out of their worst expectations of each other. Not complete inventions. That would have been easier to detect. He used what was already there. Funke's suspicion, Kemi's pride. A class difference neither woman liked discussing honestly. A marriage Funke had never welcomed. A mother-in-law Kemi had stopped trying to understand. Tayo had not created the crack. He had kept pouring water into it. Funke spoke first. He told me you wanted me kept away from project meetings. Kemi looked up. He told me you refused to sit in any meeting where I was treated as an equal professional. Funke's fingers tightened around the edge of the folder. I did say I would not take instructions from my son's wife. Kemi laughed once. There, that part sounds like you. Funke glared. Kemi did not look away. Then something strange happened. Funke laughed. It was not warm. It was not friendly. It was the startled laugh of someone who had just found one honest object in a room full of distorted mirrors. At least that one is mine, she said. Kemi nodded. Yes, that one is yours. The laughter disappeared. Funke looked at the papers again. Why? Kemi knew she was not asking about the insult. Why would he do this? I don't know. He has enough money. That has never stopped anybody from needing more money. Funke gave her a sharp look. Tayo is not desperate. I did not say he was. You implied it. Kemi leaned back. And this is what we do. What? I say one thing, you hear the worst version. You say one thing. I hear the worst version. Then we both go to Tayo and ask him to explain the other person. Funke opened her mouth. Stopped. Kemi continued. He has been our translator. Funke looked at the 2 project packs. And perhaps our translator has been editing. The words were so precise that Kemi felt something inside her settle. Not trust, not yet. A direction. She opened the Veritas pack again. Let us not decide what he did before we know what he did. Funke's eyes moved to her face. That is a surprisingly sensible sentence from you. Kemi stared. Funke waved one hand. Yes, I know, I spoiled it. Kemi almost smiled. Completely. They spent the next 2 hours doing something they should have done months earlier. They compared facts, only facts. What Funke had signed, what Kemi had written, what Tayo had said to each of them, what the company documents actually claimed. They marked 3 categories on blank sheets of paper. True, partly true, not said. It was Funke's idea. By noon, the not said column was the longest. Kemi looked at it. He did not need to forge anything. Funke's jaw tightened. No, he just needed people to assume the missing part. Yes. Kemi turned to another page. And he needed us not to compare. Funke did not answer. The older woman stood and walked to the window. For a while, she looked at the lagoon. Then she said, I have treated you badly. Kemi was so surprised she almost checked whether somebody else had entered the room. Funke did not turn around. Do not misunderstand me. I still think you are stubborn. Kemi folded her arms. You invited me here to apologize and decided to season it. I am not apologizing yet. Of course not. I am acknowledging a fact. Kemi waited. Funke's voice lowered. I believed you were trying to move my son away from me. Some of that belief came from him. Some of it came from me. She turned. I did not like that he married you without bringing you to me first. I told myself it was about family process. Maybe part of it was, but part of it was that I was used to being consulted. Kemi said nothing. Funke looked uncomfortable now. Good. The truth often looked less elegant than pride. I also thought you were impressed by his money. Kemi's face hardened. I had my own company before I met him. I know that now. You knew it then. Funke met her eyes. Yes, that answer mattered more than an excuse would have. Kemi looked away. My turn? Funke sat. If you have one. I decided very early that you were incapable of seeing me as anything except a threat. Funke raised one eyebrow. Was I giving you evidence to the contrary? No. Kemi let out a breath. But after a while, I stopped checking. If you disagreed with anything, I assumed it was because it came from me. That made it very easy for Tayo to tell me what you thought. Funke nodded once. The acknowledgement was uncomfortable for both of them. Good. Comfort had protected too many bad assumptions already. Kemi looked at the clock. I have to go. Funke touched the board pack. What do we do now? Kemi paused. We do not confront him together yet. Funke frowned. Why? Because we still do not know whether this is poor communication, aggressive project management, or something worse. My son is not a criminal. I did not say he was. You keep speaking as if Mrs. Balogun. Funke stopped. Kemi pointed at the papers. This is exactly what I mean. We do not need to decide what kind of man he is today. We need to establish what he did. Funke stared at her, then nodded. What do you suggest? We each verify the things we have the right to verify. Nothing more. No private investigator. Kemi almost laughed. This is not a film. Funke's mouth twitched. No secret recording? No breaking into his office? Please do not make me regret this alliance before lunch. Funke finally smiled. A real one this time. It transformed her face for about 2 seconds. Then she put it away. Kemi. Yes? Do not call this an alliance. What should I call it? Funke looked at the long not said column. Verification. Kemi picked up her bag. Fine. At the door, Funke stopped her. One more thing. Kemi turned. If Tayo asks whether you came here. Kemi considered it. I will not lie. Funke nodded. Neither will I. But we do not have to volunteer every detail. Funke's eyebrows rose. Kemi held her gaze. Delective truth? The irony was not lost on either of them. Funke shook her head. No boundaries. Kemi nodded slowly. Fair enough. She left. For the first time since marrying Tayo, Kemi drove away from Funke's house, without rehearsing an argument in her head. That worried her almost as much as the documents. Verification turned out to be less glamorous than suspicion. Mostly it involved reading, and discovering how many important decisions in wealthy families were hidden inside sentences nobody wanted to finish. Funke began with Samuel Okoro. She did not summon him to her house. She went to the company office herself. That surprised him. Samuel had served as company secretary for 9 years. He was a narrow-faced man in his early 50s who wore dark suits regardless of heat, and had the irritating habit of answering exactly the question asked. Funke usually found the habit useful. That morning, she found it threatening. She sat opposite him in a glass meeting room at Balogun Holdings. I want the original resolutions relating to Balogun Court. Samuel adjusted his glasses. Which period, ma? 6 months. All board resolutions or only asset committee records? Funke stared at him. All. He nodded. May I ask the purpose? No, Samuel did not move. Funke's eyes narrowed. You are refusing me? No, ma. I am asking because some records may contain information outside your access in your current capacity. Funke sat back. There it was. A boundary. She had spent years around wealth and still occasionally disliked being reminded that money did not dissolve every rule. What can I properly see? Samuel relaxed by 1 degree. Records of meetings you attended, resolutions you signed, shareholder materials issued to you, and documents relating to your property interests. If you need broader operational records, the request should go through the appropriate committee. Funke almost said, My son runs this company. The sentence reached her tongue and died there. That was exactly the kind of sentence she was trying to examine. Give me what I am entitled to. Yes, ma. Samuel hesitated. Is there a problem? Funke looked at him. Did you ever understand me to have approved redevelopment of Balogun Court? Samuel's expression became very careful. I understood you to have approved the review of redevelopment as an option. That is not what I asked. No, ma. Did you understand me to have approved it? No. The answer landed hard. Funke looked down at her hands. What about Tayo? Samuel paused. Mr. Balogun's position was that redevelopment should be developed as the lead commercial case, while stakeholder alignment continued. Stakeholder alignment. Yes, ma. Is that what we call agreement now? Samuel did not smile. No, ma. Funke looked at him for a long time. You knew there was no final family approval. Yes, and yet financing discussions proceeded. Preliminary discussions can proceed before final approval. Kemi said the same thing. Samuel's face changed slightly at Kemi's name. You have spoken to Mrs. Balogun. My daughter-in-law has a name. Samuel blinked. Funke realized what she had said. So did he. Neither commented. Did you know her design work was being presented as the base case? She asked. I knew option C was the base commercial case. I did not know the consultant disputed how her position had been summarized until her email yesterday. Funke nodded slowly. So her email caused concern, yes, good. Samuel's eyebrows rose. Funke stood. Send the records to my secure email. Yes, ma. At the door, she stopped. Samuel. Ma, if anybody asks why I requested them, I will say you requested records you were entitled to review. Funke studied him. Exactly the question asked. Samuel allowed himself the smallest smile. Yes, ma. Meanwhile, Kemi did something harder. She went back to Balogun Court, not as Tayo's wife, not as Funke's enemy, as the architect whose name was already making frightened people believe their homes had been decided over their heads. She took David with her. Ruth was waiting in the courtyard. By then, word had moved faster than any formal letter. 10 residents gathered within minutes. Then 15. A mechanic from one of the front shops folded his arms and asked the question everybody wanted answered. Kemi paused. She would not stand in a courtyard and accuse her husband with half the facts. By the project side, I am checking exactly how that happened. The mechanic shook his head. Checking? Madam, rent outside here is not checking. School fees are not checking. Kemi looked at him. What is your name, Kunle? Kunle, you are right. The murmuring eased slightly. So let me say something useful. Until you receive a formal notice through a proper process, do not make life-changing decisions because of rumors from survey teams. And if anybody tells you my firm has approved a relocation date, ask them to show you the document. Ruth nodded. That is what we wanted. Clear words. Kemi looked at her. Clear words, it should not have sounded radical. Yet somehow it did. After the meeting, Ruth walked with Kemi toward the front gate. You and Madame Funke have spoken. Kemi glanced at her. How do you know? She called me herself yesterday. What did she say? That she had not approved us leaving. Kemi nodded. Ruth smiled faintly. You are surprised. A little. She is a difficult woman. Kemi laughed before she could stop herself. Ruth continued. Difficult is not the same as wicked. Kemi looked at her. You sound like you have known her a long time. I knew her husband longer. They stopped beside the gate. Ruth looked back at the buildings. When Chief Balogun bought this place, people thought he would clear it immediately. Land here was already becoming valuable. He did repairs instead. Not because he was a saint. Do not let anybody rewrite rich men into saints after they die. Kemi smiled. I won't. He liked steady rent. He also liked saying he had never thrown an old tenant into the road. So money and pride. Most good behavior has mixed parents. Kemi laughed softly. Ruth's face grew serious. But he spoke to people. That part was real. Kemi looked at the blocks. What if the buildings really need major work? Then tell us. What if some people have to leave? Then tell us that too. What if the numbers do not allow everybody to come back? Ruth's mouth tightened. Then we will know what kind of decision it is. What people hate most is not always bad news. It is discovering that the meeting about their life happened before anybody remembered they had a voice. Kemi stood still. There it was, the human value of the entire project, stated by someone who had no interest in corporate language. Not all outcomes could be kind, but people could still be treated like people. Kemi nodded. I will remember that. Do not remember, write it down. You are architects like paper. Kemi laughed. Yes, ma. That evening, Tayo came home before 7. Kemi knew something was wrong because he did not go upstairs to change. He entered the living room still in his cobalt suit, loosened his tie and placed his phone on the center table. You went to Balogun Court. Kemi looked up from her laptop. Yes. You held a residents' meeting. I answered questions. Without telling me. I did not realize I needed permission to correct statements about my own work. Tayo stared at her. You told them transition planning started too early. It did. Do you understand what that sounds like? The truth? Disorganization. Kemi closed her laptop. If accurate information makes the project look disorganized, perhaps the project is disorganized. He paced once toward the window, then back. This is bigger than architecture, I know. No, I do not think you do. We have capital partners looking at a pipeline. We have contractors' pricing capacity. We have land value assumptions tied to timing. We cannot conduct business by holding a town hall every time somebody gets nervous. People are nervous because your project team started household transition surveys. They were gathering information. For what? To avoid delays later. Later when? He stopped. Kemi watched him. Tayo, when? When the project moves. Has it moved? Commercially. Yes. Approved. No, then why are people's household details being collected for relocation? Because serious businesses prepare. Kemi stood. Serious businesses also distinguish preparation from permission. His jaw tightened. That line sounds nice. It is not for decoration. They faced each other across the room. Tayo's voice lowered. What is happening to you? Kemi almost smiled. There it was again, the problem traveling toward her. What is happening to me? You used to understand how I work. I understood that you move quickly. I have to. I did not understand that you move other people's consent with you. His eyes narrowed. That is unfair, is it? Yes. Then explain the pack. I already did. No. You explained why it should not matter. Kemi. And explain your mother. The words stopped him. What about her? Kemi watched his face. She had promised Funke she would not lie. She had not promised to expose every conversation on demand. Why did you tell me she was leaning toward redevelopment? Because she was. She says she was not. Tayo went still. You spoke to her again. Yes. His expression changed in a way Kemi had never seen before. Not fear. Calculation. It lasted less than a second. Then the hurt returned. So now you and my mother are discussing me behind my back. Kemi stared at him. Interesting. What? I ask why you told us different things. You answer that we are discussing you. You are. That is not the question. He rubbed the back of his neck. My mother changes her position depending on who is in front of her. She says the same about me. Tayo's eyes flicked to hers. Kemi continued. You told her I think rehabilitation is a waste of money. I told her you were concerned about cost. You told her I thought your father was too sentimental about the property. I may have said you were less emotionally attached. I never met him. That is exactly why you are less emotionally attached. Kemi stared. He had an answer for every fragment. That was the method. Not one huge lie. 100 defensible edits. Tayo, her voice was quiet now. Did you tell your mother I wanted her excluded from project meetings? He looked away. Kemi. Did you? I told her we needed professional discussions without family emotion. Did I ask you to exclude her? No. Did you tell her I did? Silence. Kemi's stomach turned. Not because she had not suspected it, because suspicion still left room for rescue. Silence did not. Tayo walked toward her. Kemi, listen to me. You and my mother have been at war since before the wedding. Every meeting became personal. I was trying to keep things moving. You were telling each of us things the other did not say. I was translating. Kemi laughed. The sound came out sharp. Your mother used that word. Tayo's face changed. What word? Translator. He stopped walking. Kemi looked at him. For the first time, she saw it clearly. The thing he was afraid of was not that they would become friends. It was that they would compare notes. Tayo. She said his name slowly. What exactly are you trying to get approved before we understand what is happening? His face hardened. Nothing. Then why does this matter so much? Because delay costs money. How much? That is not the point. It is now. He picked up his phone. I am not discussing confidential financing with you in the middle of an argument. Kemi's eyes narrowed. You were happy to use my professional work in the financing. That is different. Of course it is. He started toward the stairs. Kemi spoke before he reached them. I have withdrawn my endorsement. He stopped. What I sent the correction yesterday. Today I instructed my office that no design material is to be represented as a preferred scheme without written approval from me. Tayo turned slowly. Kemi, do you know what you have done? Yes, you could trigger a lender review. If a lender review is triggered because I told the truth about my own work, then the lender needed the truth. His face went blank. There was no tenderness in it now, no injured husband, just the CEO. You are jeopardizing a transaction you do not understand. Kemi felt the insult more clearly because he had removed the softness around it. Then explain it. I do not have to explain every corporate decision to my wife. No. She nodded once. Something in her agreement unsettled him. But you also do not get to use your wife's name to support a corporate decision. You refuse to explain to her. They looked at each other. Then Kemi picked up her laptop and walked past him. She slept in the guest room that night, not as punishment. She simply did not want his hand reaching for her in the dark and turning a business argument back into intimacy. At 2:17 a.m., she woke and found a message from Funke. Samuel confirms I never approved redevelopment. I approved review only. Kemi stared at the screen. Then another message arrived. Also, your husband has asked why I am requesting old resolutions. Kemi sat up. What did you tell him? Funke replied almost immediately. The truth, that I wanted to read what I signed. Kemi smiled despite herself. Good. 3 dots. Then Funke sent. He did not like that answer. Kemi typed. Neither did he when I read what carried my name. Funke's reply came after a minute. Tomorrow, 11 a.m. My house. Kemi looked toward the closed guest room door. Then typed, I'll be there. At 11 the next morning, the tea was untouched again. This time, Funke had arranged the papers in piles. Kemi noticed labels written in Funke's neat hand. Sign, sieved, assumed. Your categories are improving, Kemi said. Funke did not look up. I had a good teacher, Kemi sat. That sounded dangerously like praise. Do not get used to it. Better. They worked. Samuel's records confirmed what Funke remembered. The family side had authorized review, valuation, and option development. Tayo had authority to explore financing structures and commission technical work. That was not unusual. What he did not have was a signed final instruction from Funke, approving redevelopment of the property interest she controlled. Kemi's records showed the same pattern from another direction. She had been hired to assess and compare. Tayo was entitled to use the existence of her studies internally. He was not entitled to present her professional conclusion as stronger than it was. The truth was irritatingly ordinary. Nobody had forged a signature. Nobody had stolen a stamp. Nobody had created a secret company in the name of a dead uncle. They had something more believable. A powerful executive had moved faster than consent and relied on language to make the distance look smaller. Funke tapped one line in a capital partner update. What does this mean? Kemi, read it. Balogun Court identified as near-term value unlock asset. Technical base case established. Principal stakeholder alignment substantially advanced. Kemi looked up. It means somebody told investors the project was further along than it feels from this room. Substantially advanced. Yes. Am I the principal stakeholder? In part. There may be others. Funke picked up her phone. I will ask Samuel. Kemi stopped her. Ask what you are entitled to ask. Do not make him breach anything. Funke gave her an offended look. I know how governance works. Yesterday you discovered you signed a document without reading the appendix. Funke stared at her. Kemi lifted both hands. Sorry. No, you are not completely. Funke looked back at the paper. A minute later she said quietly, I signed because he was my son. Kemi's amusement disappeared. Funke continued. After his father died, Tayo carried more than people saw. Banks, staff, family members who thought their surname was a salary. He was 31. Everybody came to me and said, Madam, the boy is strong. Nobody asked whether strength was what he wanted. Kemi listened. I started trusting his decisions because he was usually right, Funke said. Then I became lazy with the trust. That does not make what he did your fault. No, but it makes my signature my fault. Kemi looked at the genuine signature on the resolution. That distinction mattered. Funke was not taking responsibility for Tayo's choices. She was taking responsibility for her own. Kemi thought about every time she had accepted, you know how she is, as sufficient evidence about Funke. My version was not a signature, she said. Funke looked at her. I let him speak for you because it was easier than speaking to you. That was foolish. Yes. Funke blinked. Kemi smiled faintly. You wanted honesty. I did not say I wanted enthusiasm. They returned to the documents. By early afternoon, Samuel confirmed something Funke had the right to know as a shareholder and signatory to relevant materials. Balogun Court had been used in strategic presentations as one of several assets expected to support the group's near-term capital program. Not as collateral secretly pledged behind her back. Not as a property already sold. Something more mundane. Tayo had told capital partners that the group had a credible pipeline of assets it could reposition, finance, or monetize over time. Balogun Court was one of the most attractive because of location and underused land value. If it fell out of the near-term plan, the company would not collapse. But Tayo would have to revise projections, explain delays, and perhaps accept less favorable timing on other expansion plans. For a billionaire, that was not ruin. For a man whose authority rested on moving faster than everyone else, it was exposure. Kemi read the explanation twice. So he is not stealing the property. Funke's eyes flashed. I never said he was stealing. I know. I'm saying the motive is clearer now. He wanted the project ready. He wanted it to look ready enough that everyone would continue moving. Funke sat back. And by the time we objected? Kemi finished the thought. Too much time and money would already be committed. Objection would look unreasonable. The older woman's face hardened. That is how his father negotiated. Kemi looked at her. Funke's voice was bitter. He would start painting before asking whether I liked the color. And did you? No, did he stop? Sometimes. Funke almost smiled. Marriage is long. Then the smile vanished. I should have seen it. Kemi shook her head. You saw what you were trained to call efficiency. Funke looked at her sharply. And you? Kemi did not defend herself. I married it that evening. Kemi returned to the Ikoyi house and found Tayo in his study. He had taken off his jacket. His white shirt sleeves were rolled to the elbow. 3 screens glowed across his desk. For a moment, Kemi saw the man who had built his life out of decisions made before other people finished thinking. She had admired that once. Part of her still did. Admiration was inconvenient that way. Did not disappear simply because a person had hurt you. Tayo looked up. Can we talk? Yes. Kemi closed the door behind her. He leaned back. I spoke to my mother. I know. She says she is requesting a formal review of the project representations. Yes. And you have frozen your design materials. I have corrected how they may be used. You know what I mean. Kemi sat opposite him. Then say what you mean. His mouth tightened. Why are you doing this? Kemi looked at him for several seconds. I want to ask you something. And I want you to answer, without explaining my mother-in-law to me, without explaining finance, and without telling me I do not understand your work. Tayo's eyes narrowed. Fine. Did you tell your mother I wanted her excluded from project discussions? He looked away. Yes. The direct answer hurt more than the earlier silence. Did I ever ask you to do that? No. Did you tell me she wanted redevelopment to move forward? Yes. Had she actually said that? She had said she was tired of spending money on old assets. That is not my question. No, not in those words. Did you tell her I thought rehabilitation was a waste? Yes. Did I say it? Not exactly. Kemi looked at him. Tayo rubbed his face. I know what this looks like. Do you? Yes. Tell me. He stood and walked to the window. Below them, the garden lights were coming on one by one. I was trying to keep 2 impossible people from blocking every decision. Kemi almost laughed. There it was, not an apology, a management problem. Tayo, he turned. You and my mother despised each other. Every conversation became a fight about respect. If I told her you wanted a proper technical review, she heard, this girl thinks I am stupid. If I told you Mum wanted legacy protected, you heard, she thinks I am here for money. I spent a year translating both of you. You were not translating, I was simplifying. You were changing. I was getting decisions made. Kemi stared at him. There it was. The sentence beneath all the others, getting decisions made. You used our hatred. Tayo shook his head. No, you knew we would not verify with each other. I knew direct communication between you was destructive. So you made yourself the only safe source. I made myself the buffer. A buffer does not invent what people said. He looked at her. I did not invent everything. Kemi laughed once. Listen to yourself. Tayo's voice rose for the first time. You think I enjoyed this? You think I wanted to spend every week managing my mother's feelings and my wife's pride while trying to run a company? Kemi sat very still. My pride. Yes, Kemi, your pride. You walked into my family determined not to need anybody. Every concern from my mother became class prejudice. Every question became an insult. Many of them were insults. Yes, and I defended you. You defended me from stories you were helping write. His face tightened. That is not fair. Stop saying that when you mean uncomfortable. Silence, Kemi stood. Why Balogun Court? Tayo looked away. Commercial value, why now? He said nothing. Because your capital program needs the asset pipeline to look advanced. His head snapped back toward her. Who told you that? Kemi heard the question and almost smiled. Not, is that true? Who told you? Does it matter? Yes, why? Because confidential information is moving where it should not. No. Information that concerns your mother's property interests reached your mother through proper records. Information about my professional work reached me because it carried my name. We compared what belongs to us. Tayo stared at her. You two have been coordinating. We have been speaking. About me. About ourselves. That stopped him. Kemi stepped closer. You trained us to believe those were the same thing. He looked at her, and for the first time she saw something like fear. Not fear of prison, not fear of poverty. Fear of losing control over interpretation. Kemi, the capital program is not some personal scheme. I know. We are building logistics capacity, housing, warehousing. We employ thousands of people directly and indirectly. Timing matters. I know. If Balogun Court moves this year, we free value that supports other commitments. If it sits for another 3 years while Mum debates memory and tenants resist every change, the opportunity narrows. Then make that argument honestly. You think honesty wins every negotiation? No. Kemi shook her head. But consent obtained through exhaustion, pressure, or selective truth is not agreement just because the signature is genuine. Tayo's eyes hardened. You are making me sound like a criminal. I have not used that word once. Your behavior says it. My behavior says I will not let my professional name carry an opinion I did not give. And our marriage? Kemi's throat tightened. There it was. The question she had been avoiding. She looked at the man she loved. Not loved. Loved. Present tense was the painful part. Our marriage is why this is worse. His face softened. Kemi. No. Her voice broke slightly. She hated it. Continued anyway. If a client did this, I would correct the record and review the relationship. But you are my husband. You came to bed after telling your mother I said things I never said. You held me when I cried after she insulted me. You told me you were protecting me from her. Tayo's eyes dropped. And some of those fights existed because you kept us apart. I never told her to insult you. No, you did something cleaner. You gave her reasons to distrust me, and then comforted me when the distrust hurt. He looked up sharply. That is a terrible thing to say. It is a terrible thing to realize. The room went quiet. Tayo came around the desk. Kemi, I love you. She took one step back. He stopped. I love you, he repeated. I have never cheated on you. I have never touched you in anger. I have never denied you anything. Kemi looked at him. Listen to the list you just made. His face changed. That is not what I meant, I know. She swallowed. You think because you did not betray me in the most obvious ways, this should fit inside marriage as a management mistake. Kemi, you decided what truth I could handle. He looked exhausted now. I decided what conflict I could handle, and you made us pay for that decision. Neither spoke for several seconds. Then Tayo asked quietly, What do you want? Kemi answered immediately. I want the project paused until the representations are corrected and stakeholders know what is actually approved. His face closed. That is not going to happen. Then my work stays withdrawn. You are my wife, and? The word came out colder than she intended. Tayo stared. Kemi continued. My marriage certificate is not a professional authorization. He looked away. And personally? He asked. Kemi's voice softened despite herself. Personally, I need space. How much? I don't know. Where will you go? My flat in Yaba is still mine. You kept that place? I rent it to nobody. I use it when work runs late. He almost laughed. You kept an escape apartment. Kemi stared at him. No, I kept property I owned before I married you. The fact that he heard escape told her more than he meant to say. She left the study. That night she packed one suitcase, not dramatically. No jewelry thrown on the floor, no wedding photographs smashed. She took clothes for a week, 2 work shoes, her laptop charger, medication, toiletries, and the ugly mug her mother had bought her during university. Tayo stood in the bedroom doorway. You are really leaving, for now, Kemi. She zipped the suitcase. He looked at the pale aqua blouse folded on top. Do not let my mother turn this into what she always wanted. Kemi stopped, then slowly looked at him. Even now he reached for the triangle. She picked up the suitcase. Your mother is not why I am leaving. He said nothing. Kemi walked past him. At the bottom of the stairs, she realized her hands were shaking again. This time, she let them. Funke did not hear about Kemi leaving from Tayo. She heard it from Kemi. The message arrived at 6:40 the next morning. I have moved to Yaba for now. This is between Tayo and me. Please do not use it against him in the project discussion. Funke read the message twice. Then a third time. She sat at her dressing table in a purple silk robe, one earring in her left hand. For years she had assumed that if Tayo's marriage ever cracked, she would feel vindicated. She felt sick instead. Not because she had suddenly become fond of Kemi. Affection was too easy a word for what was happening. She simply understood now that she had been standing in a house while somebody loosened the screws and had blamed the other woman for the sound. Funke typed slowly. I will not. She deleted it, typed again. Understood. Deleted that too. Finally she wrote, your marriage is yours. The project is separate. Kemi replied with one word. Good. Funke stared at the screen. Stubborn girl, she muttered. Then, after a moment, added, good. At noon, she went to see Tayo. He was in his office on the 22nd floor, standing before a screen full of numbers. He did not offer her a seat. Mum, Tayo, I have a call in 15 minutes. Then you have 15 minutes. He shut the laptop harder than necessary. You and Kemi have done enough damage for 1 week. Funke looked at her son. There were moments when age disappeared from a mother's eyes. She saw the boy who had once come home from school furious because a teacher accused him of copying an answer he had actually known. He had hated being misunderstood. Somewhere along the way, he had become very comfortable misunderstanding other people for efficiency. Kemi has left the house, Funke said. Tayo's face changed. She told you. Yes, of course she did. Do not. He blinked. Do not what? Do not make her speaking to me the problem. Tayo looked away. Funke placed the blue folder on his desk. I read what I signed. He did not touch it. I know. I approved review. Yes. I did not approve redevelopment. No one said you did. Funke opened the pack and placed one finger under principal stakeholder alignment, substantially advanced. What is this? Tayo's jaw tightened. Exactly what it says. What does substantially advanced mean? It means discussions were advanced with whom? With you. With Kemi. With the technical team. Did I agree? You agreed to explore. Did Kemi agree? She produced the option. That is not what I asked. Tayo pushed back from the desk. Mum, please. I am dealing with this from every direction. Good. He stares at her. Good? Yes. Perhaps directions are what you need. His face hardened. Did she teach you that line? Funke's palm came down on the desk. Not hard enough to be theatrical. Hard enough to stop him. This is not about Kemi. Tayo went quiet. I signed a broad review because I trusted you, Funke said. You used that trust as evidence of a narrower agreement I did not give. I did not forge your signature. Funke stared at him. I know. The answer unsettled him. That is why this conversation is difficult. If you had forged something, I would know what to call it. You did something people like us excuse because it happens in good offices with correct grammar. Tayo looked away. You moved before permission and expected the movement itself to become pressure for permission. That is called execution. No, execution comes after a decision. In business, those lines are not always clean. They should be clean enough that people know what they agreed to. Tayo folded his arms. You think father waited for perfect consensus? Funke's eyes narrowed. Do not use your father to defend yourself to me. He built this company by moving, and he made mistakes. He also left you wealthy enough to complain about how he did it. The sentence hit. Tayo knew it immediately. His face changed. Mum, I did not mean. Yes, you did. Funke's voice was quiet. That is another habit you have. You say the thing, then if the room reacts badly, you explain what you meant instead. He looked down. Funke continued. Your father sometimes started before I was ready. We fought about it for 34 years. Do not turn his flaws into family tradition. Tayo sat slowly. For the first time, he looked less like a billionaire than a tired son. What do you want me to do? Pause Balogun Court. His head came up. No. Then I will formally request review of every representation made under my name or ownership interest. Mum, that will spook partners. Then correct them before they become frightened by discovering it elsewhere. You don't understand the timing. Funke almost smiled. Kemi says you use that sentence. His face darkened. Of course she does. Funke studied him. You really cannot stop. Stop what? Putting the woman who is not in the room between us. Tayo said nothing. Funke picked up the folder. The project review meeting is Friday. I know. I will attend, Mum. And Kemi should attend for her professional record. That is not necessary. It is now. She turned toward the door. Mum. Funke stopped. Tayo's voice was quieter. Are you choosing her over me? Funke closed her eyes for 1 second, then turned. When you were 12, you broke a neighbor's window with a football. You asked me the same kind of question when I made you apologize. You said, are you on his side? Tayo looked at her. I told you then that truth does not become betrayal because it embarrasses somebody you love. His eyes dropped. Funke opened the door. I am telling you again. Friday came with rain, not dramatic rain. Lagos rain that started before dawn, clogged 2 roads, slowed everybody down and left the city shining under a grey sky. Kemi arrived at Balogun Holdings 10 minutes early. She wore a light aqua blouse under a navy jacket, dark trousers and low heels, because she had no intention of suffering for fashion in a meeting that might last 3 hours. Funke arrived 5 minutes later in ruby red. They met outside the conference room. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Funke looked at Kemi's jacket. You look like you are about to audit somebody. Kemi looked at the ruby outfit. You look like the audit result. Funke gave her a long stare, then they both laughed. Briefly, the door opened. Samuel stepped out. Ladies. His eyes moved between them. Something in his face suggested he had heard enough rumors to expect lightning. Are we ready? He asked. Kemi nodded. Funke said, we have been ready for years. We just did not know we were attending different meetings. Samuel wisely chose not to respond. Inside were Tayo, 2 non-family directors, the project director, finance counsel, a representative from the capital partner, Samuel and 1 senior technical advisor. No cheering crowd, no cameras, no reporters waiting outside. Just people with folders, laptops and expensive coffee. That was where decisions like this were usually made. Tayo sat at the far end of the table. He wore a cobalt suit. Kemi had once teased him that he owned too much blue. That morning she noticed the suit before she noticed his face. Maybe because looking at the suit was easier. Samuel opened the meeting. The purpose today is to resolve inconsistencies in stakeholder and consultant representations relating to the Balogun Court redevelopment case, determine whether current materials remain fit for external reliance and decide next steps. Tayo leaned forward. Before we turn an internal misunderstanding into a governance crisis, I think context is important. Kemi felt Funke move slightly beside her. Samuel nodded. You will have the opportunity. Tayo's mouth tightened. The project director presented first. He walked through the timeline. Asset review authorized. Technical options commissioned. Option C modeled as the strongest financial scenario. Financing discussion started. Resident data collection initiated. Kemi's correction issued. Funke's review request issued. Nobody accused anybody of fraud. Nobody needed to. The sequence itself was enough. Then Samuel asked Kemi to speak. She opened her folder. My concern is narrow, she said. George Studio produced 3 preliminary options. We did not endorse a preferred scheme. We advised that selection should follow structural verification, ownership objectives, and resident impact review. Documents circulated externally created a reasonable impression that our technical conclusion was stronger than it was. The capital partner representative asked, "Are you saying the underlying redevelopment option is technically unsound?" No. Tayo looked at her. Kemi continued, "I am saying technical possibility and professional endorsement are not the same thing." The representative nodded. "Would you be willing to continue work if the project is rescoped properly?" Kemi paused. "Yes, subject to a fresh instruction, corrected records, and a process that does not treat resident transition as decided before selection." That answer surprised Tayo. She saw it. He had expected revenge. She was not there for revenge. Funke spoke next. "I approved strategic review of older assets and options for Balogun Court. I did not give final approval for redevelopment or resident relocation." One director asked, "But you signed the review resolution?" "Yes." "And the language on asset optimization?" "Yes." "Then some ambiguity is understandable." Funke nodded. "Some ambiguity is mine." The room went still. Tayo looked at her. Funke did not look away. "I signed a broad document without reading every appendix. That was careless. I will not pretend otherwise, because it would be convenient today." Kemi watched the director's face change. People trusted admissions that cost something. Funke continued, "But my carelessness does not convert review into approval, nor does it justify presenting alignment as more advanced than it was." Tayo leaned forward. "May I respond now?" Samuel nodded. Tayo stood. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The group has operated in a difficult capital environment. We have several expansion projects competing for timing and funding. Balogun Court is a high-value, underperforming asset. My responsibility was to make sure we understood what could be done with it, and that we did not lose months waiting for every emotional objection to disappear. Funke's mouth tightened at emotional. Tayo continued, "No property was sold. No resident was evicted. No construction contract was awarded. No signature was forged. Preliminary work moved in parallel because that is how serious projects are developed." The project director nodded slightly. The capital partner representative said nothing. Tayo looked at Kemi. The technical option existed. It was not invented. "No one said it was," Kemi replied. He turned to Funke. "You approved review and value optimization, yes. So this is being presented as if I fabricated an entire project." "I did not." Funke folded her hands. "No, you fabricated agreement." The room became still. Tayo stared at her. "I did not. You told me Kemi wanted me excluded from meetings." His eyes flicked toward the others. "This is not relevant." Kemi spoke. "It is relevant to stakeholder alignment, because you used our supposed positions to justify how you managed the process." Tayo's face hardened. "This is exactly why I kept family conflict out of the project." Funke leaned forward. "You did not keep it out. You used it." He stared at her. She continued, "You told me things Kemi had not said. You told Kemi things I had not said. Because we did not trust each other, neither of us checked. That made your work easier." Tayo's jaw tightened. "This meeting is becoming personal." Kemi looked at him. "It became personal when my marriage was used to manage a corporate approval." One of the directors shifted uncomfortably. "Good. Some truths should make a room uncomfortable." Tayo looked at Kemi. "You are allowing anger about our marriage to interfere with business." Kemi shook her head. "No, I am doing the opposite. That is why I have not asked this committee to decide anything about our marriage." Then she placed one page on the table. "My position is professional. Correct the record. Reassess the project from the actual consent state. If you want my firm to continue, issue a fresh instruction." She sat back. No speech, no tears, nothing else was needed. Funke placed her own page beside it. "My position is as an owner and stakeholder. I withdraw any assumption that my earlier asset review approval constitutes approval for this scheme. I am willing to consider redevelopment. I am not willing to pretend I already considered what I did not." Tayo stared at both pages. Then he gave a short, disbelieving laugh. You two don't even trust each other. Funke looked at Kemi. Kemi looked back. Months earlier, that sentence would have been enough. It would have pulled them apart instantly. This time, Funke answered. That was useful to you. She turned back to her son. It is no longer useful. Nobody spoke. Tayo sat down. The capital partner representative finally leaned forward. From our side, we need the stakeholder position clarified before we rely on this asset in the near-term plan. That does not mean we are withdrawing from the wider relationship. It means the case needs to be clean. Clean, such a small word. Samuel proposed next steps. Pause external reliance on the current Balogun Court base case. Correct consultant and stakeholder descriptions. Suspend resident transition planning until an actual scheme was selected. Commission an independent review of project governance and representations. Rebuild the decision timeline. One director added another point. Given that Tayo drove the current process, I think oversight of this specific review should sit elsewhere until it is complete. Tayo looked at him. You are removing me from my own project? Temporarily, from oversight of the review. That is unnecessary. Maybe, the director folded his hands. But confidence matters. The irony was almost cruel. Tayo had spent months using confidence to move the project. Now confidence was the reason it stopped. The decision passed. Not unanimously. Enough. Tayo did not lose his company. He did not lose his fortune. Nobody marched him out of the building. He simply lost control of one project and, more painfully, the assumption that his judgment did not need to be checked. For a man like Tayo, that was not small. When the meeting ended, people packed laptops and papers with the awkward efficiency of professionals who had witnessed a family wound and were pretending they had only discussed governance. Kemi stood. Tayo did not look at her. Funke gathered her folder. At the door, Kemi stopped. Tayo, he looked up. She wanted to say something large, something final. Instead, she said, "The review was necessary." His mouth tightened. "I know what you think." Kemi shook her head. "No, that is the problem. You keep thinking you know what other people think." Then she left. The review took 6 weeks, long enough for gossip to become boring, long enough for the first dramatic version of the story to die. There had been no secret sale, no missing millions, no forged deed hidden in a safe. What the reviewers found was less cinematic and more useful. The company's early project development had moved ahead of clear stakeholder consent. Internal presentations had compressed uncertainty into optimistic language. Kemi's design role had been overstated. Funke's broad approval had been treated as stronger support than it was. Resident transition work had begun before a final direction was selected. There was no finding that Tayo had stolen from the company or personally enriched himself through the project. There was a finding that his management of the process had been too dependent on informal authority and selective reporting. That was enough. The board changed the approval controls for major family-linked assets. Material stakeholder assumptions now had to be confirmed in writing before being repeated externally as settled positions. Consultants had to approve summaries of their conclusions before those summaries went into financing packs. Resident impact work could begin early, but any contact had to state clearly whether a proposal was exploratory, selected, or approved. Samuel called the changes basic hygiene. Funke called them things grown people should have been doing already. Kemi preferred Funke's version. Balogun Court did not disappear from the redevelopment pipeline. That mattered. It would have been easy to pretend justice required preserving every cracked wall forever. It did not. The structural investigations were completed properly. They confirmed that 2 rear sections had serious problems. Drainage and wastewater systems needed major replacement. Accessibility was poor. Fire safety upgrades would be expensive. Doing nothing was not kindness, so the project started again, from the beginning, not from Tayo's preferred slide, from the actual questions. What could be repaired? What needed rebuilding? How many residents would be affected during each phase? What relocation support was realistic? Could some people return? Which promises could the owners afford to make and keep? Kemi agreed to remain involved, but George Studio was no longer treated as the decorative stamp on a conclusion already chosen. She brought 2 younger architects to the resident sessions and made them sit at the back first. Listen before you draw, she told them. One of them nodded very seriously and immediately opened a sketchbook. Kemi closed it with 2 fingers. I said, listen. Ruth saw that and laughed for nearly a minute. Funke attended the second resident meeting herself. She stood beneath the same almond tree where she had once accused Kemi of touching her husband's legacy. This time, she did not arrive in anger. She arrived with a folder. Ruth looked at it and said, Madam, you people and paper. Funke glanced toward Kemi. I have been corrupted. Kemi nearly choked on her water. The residents did not receive everything they wanted. Some hoped no one would ever have to move. That was not possible. Some wanted rent levels guaranteed indefinitely. The owners would not promise it. But the new plan created phased works instead of one sweeping clearance. Temporary relocation support was budgeted for affected households. Long-term tenants received defined options rather than vague assurances. The front shops were kept operating through most of the works, because shutting them all at once would have destroyed people's income. No solution made everyone happy. That was real life. But everybody knew what was being discussed before the decision became concrete. And that changed the temperature of the room. Funke changed too. Not overnight, she was still Funke. At one consultation, she told a contractor his cost estimate looked like a ransom note with a company logo. At another, she asked a junior planner the same question 4 times because she disliked his answer all 4 times. Kemi watched her and thought, difficult is not the same as wicked. Ruth had been right. A month after the review ended, Funke asked Kemi to lunch. Not summoned, asked. They met at a quiet restaurant on Victoria Island. Kemi arrived first. Funke arrived exactly 6 minutes late and complained about traffic as if Lagos had personally disappointed her. They ordered. For 10 minutes they spoke about the project. Then Funke placed her fork down. I owe you an apology. Kemi looked at her. Funke frowned. Do not make that face. What face? The face of somebody watching an eclipse. Kemi smiled. Sorry, you are not. No. Funke took a breath. I accused you of marrying Tayo for access. I treated your work as less serious because you were his wife. I assumed disagreement meant ambition. And I spoke to you in ways I would not have tolerated if somebody spoke to me like that. Kemi said nothing. Funke continued. I was wrong, no but, no explanation about grief, no reminder that Kemi was stubborn. Kemi noticed the absence. Thank you, she said. Funke nodded. I am not asking you to forget it. Good. There is the stubbornness. Kemi laughed. Funke smiled briefly. Then Kemi grew serious. I owe you one, too. Funke lifted an eyebrow. I assumed almost every concern you raised was about class or control. Sometimes it was. Sometimes, do not spoil your apology. Funke closed her mouth. Kemi continued. But sometimes you were asking a legitimate question, and I stopped listening before you finished. Because I had already decided why you were asking it. Funke nodded. That made it easier for Tayo to speak for you to me, and for him to speak for you to me. They sat with that. Then Funke asked the question she had carefully avoided for weeks. How is your marriage? Kemi looked down at her plate. Tayo and I are seeing a counselor. Funke's face revealed nothing. He agreed? Yes, willingly? Kemi smiled faintly. Eventually. Are you going back? I don't know. Funke nodded. For once, she did not offer an opinion. That might have been the greatest proof of growth either woman had seen. Kemi continued living in Yaba. Tayo did not buy her a house to fix things. He tried once to send a new car after hers, spent 2 days at the mechanic. She sent it back. His message came immediately. It is only practical, Kemi replied. So is a taxi. He did not send another car. Their counseling was ugly in a quiet way. Tayo did not enjoy being asked what he had feared would happen if Kemi and Funke spoke directly. At first he said, conflict. The counselor asked, and if conflict happened, he said, nothing would move. And if nothing moved, the project would lose time. And if the project lost time, Tayo went silent. Eventually, after several sessions, he admitted the part Kemi had already suspected. He was terrified of becoming the man who had inherited a great company and then slowed it down. His father had been famous inside the family for decisions that looked reckless until they worked. Tayo had built his identity around being faster, sharper and harder to obstruct. Delay felt like failure. Disagreement felt like incompetence. So he had learned to reduce disagreement before it reached him. Sometimes by persuading, sometimes by withholding, sometimes by telling one person only the piece that would keep them moving. That may explain it, Kemi told him after one session. It does not excuse it. I know, the old Tayo would have added a paragraph. That day he did not. Months passed. Kemi did not make a dramatic announcement about divorce. She also did not move home because Tayo cried once in counseling. Trust did not return because the plot needed an ending. It returned, if it returned at all, in smaller things. A document sent before a decision instead of after. A disagreement carried directly to the person involved. A sentence that began, "This is what I want," instead of, "Everyone agrees." Tayo stepped back from direct oversight of Balogun Court, even after the review formally ended. Another executive chaired the project committee. He hated it. He did it anyway. That mattered more to Kemi than any flower he sent. One Saturday afternoon, almost 8 months after the first confrontation, Kemi returned to Balogun Court for a design workshop. Temporary fencing had gone up around the rear block. The front courtyard remained open. Children chased a soft football between plastic chairs while adults argued over revised drawings. The almond trees were still there. Funke sat beneath one of them beside Ruth. Ruby had been replaced by a bright violet caftan that day. Ruth wore green again. Kemi carried a roll of drawings toward them. Funke held out her hand. "Give me." Kemi stopped. "You want the drawings?" "Yes." "Why?" "I want to read before the meeting." Kemi stared at her. Funke frowned. "What?" "Nothing. Your face is doing that eclipse thing again." Kemi laughed and handed over the set. Funke opened the first page carefully. Ruth leaned across. "Madam, you understand all these lines now?" "No." "Then why are you reading?" Funke adjusted her glasses, "So that when I do not understand, I will know exactly what I am asking." Ruth nodded with approval. "That one is better." Kemi pulled a plastic chair closer and sat beside them. Her phone vibrated. A message from Tayo. "How is the workshop?" Kemi looked at it. Months earlier, she might have told him what Funke thought. Funke might have told him what Kemi wanted. He might have filtered both answers and called it peace. Kemi typed, "Ask your mother. She is here." Then she put the phone face down. Funke turned another page. "Why is this staircase moving?" Kemi leaned over the drawing. "It gives the rear units a safer exit and frees space for the drainage line." "Does Ruth know?" Ruth clicked her tongue. "I am sitting here, Funke." Funke looked at her. "Then answer yourself." Ruth laughed. Kemi did too. For a while, the three women bent over the drawing together while children shouted across the courtyard, and somebody's radio played too loudly from an upstairs window. No billionaire arrived to explain what anybody meant. Nobody needed him to. And perhaps that was the part worth remembering. Money can rebuild walls. Lawyers can correct documents. Boards can change procedures. Even a marriage may find a way back from a serious wound if the people inside it are willing to do the slow work. But there is a simpler protection people often ignore until damage has already begun. When someone keeps telling you what another person thinks, ask the other person. Funke turned the last page herself.